I'm going to start by introducing our two first panelists. Nolan Brown is a Shoshone-Bannock and Anishinaabe descendant. He's the original territories and historic research manager for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, and he's worked in this area since 2017. He assists in tribal, historical, and general research projects, documenting cultural and historic sites within the tribe's original lands. He coordinates educational and interpretive endeavors for the tribal membership and the general public. Brown's work involves projects with a number of collaborating state and federal agencies. And joining him is Shoshone-Bannock tribal citizen Bailey Dann, who works at her tribe's Language and Cultural Preservation Department as a research and education specialist in the Office of Original Territories and Historic Research. Her roles encompass diverse research projects and collaborations with federal and nonprofit entities. She graduated from Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa, with a bachelor's in anthropology, studio art, and secondary education. Recognizing the urgent need for Shoshone language revitalization and curriculum development, Bailey pursued and received her master's degree in linguistic anthropology at Idaho State University in 2023. So thank you to our first panelists.
Hello, you can hear me all right? All right. Zongo Wichiku, Nanani Bailey Dan, the Shoshone-Bannock, the Sam Botor night, no Soka Nina can, no Nama Desumbaduap, Shoshone-Bannock, no one my derivation. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bailey Dan. I'm a Shoshone-Bannock tribal member, as was said. Oh no. Maybe if I do this. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bailey. I was introduced, so I don't need to repeat that. But I would like to tell you guys a story, and I'm going to speak in our language using our language telling this story, because in our language is very strong, and something about our language is that it's endangered. And I've spent the last 24 years of my life learning our language, the Shoshone language, and it's really important to me that we share our tribal history, our story here in Montana, using our language, because the land here, our relatives, our more than human relatives, the beings here recognize our language. And it's really important that we can reclaim this space using that language. So I'd like to tell our story in our language, if that's all right with you. Nanada Guyandoy, Namanoan, Namabanite, no the Sosone, no one, Niwanad. Dani wapanda sa nama nadagwayapanda masumbaruch and sura vesh nama nadagwayangan vesh daminacho nama noa nahan bowash nama noa nahan nama noa naip nama degwap nama utrup nama noa naip sikana doa vajingan vesh sida oyon na sogo panga nama nahan nama avesi kangeshan devo bia devo pa nama bia degwani na devo tidigit nama nana tutu guana banganahan nama aves nama nana tutu guana suda siki Montana handun daibo de wap nani hand nak sikwan sogo bia bar bigad Hanani hand, Great Falls, Hanani hand, Dudaivo de wap. Nama nana tutu go na nana mai na ka. Agay dekan da sundukun deka, kuchun deka, gamun deka, soni beyu deka, hukun dekan da su uaras. Suda oyo gon sogop paha. Basa sogop, ujun sogop, soni sogop, wongo sogop, da bia ba sumbaruchand. Bia ba sumbaruchand. Sudah siki noa nahkan isin naman deviwa. Nama sonda noa na nao naita sonda sogo pa na kan. Nama suguru sengoi betu nama boy na noa nomiain. Nama devi waka nama sogo bambai. Buhisad. Bengui. Wasip. Dekap. Desenatsumbai. Nama nana tutugoa na sikin sogo pa mavaziakan. Nama siki maveziak. Nama binai gimaire. Urenda sengeshan devoe doe. Ugirabe. Mama nanangan. Isha nadagoyap. Duka no ande degwap. Naman degwap. Sikan sogo pa. Nanga sumbarukan. Desan wasu tuki. Wasu adagikan. Naman noa sikin sogo pwan. Abesh. Desan ugis. Desan numonangwat na handoy. Na degwano usandaka. Thank you. So with that story, when we translate into English, it doesn't feel the same. There's not a direct translation in our language. It has a great power to it. And so I wanted to take this space and speak our language here because our ancestors were here. They came here time after time, generation after generation, and we still come here. Boash, namasich, we're still here. And by doing that, I recognize our lands, our earth, our relatives, and I greet them, and it's really powerful. And so I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I humbly thank you for listening. This story was passed down by elders. So it's not my story to tell, but the story that has been passed down by our elders generation after generation through that oral history. And I'm privileged that I can write it to help remind me, but this story has been told for thousands of years in this land that we now call Montana. Montana, that's what we call it in English. But I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and not only are we telling this story through our language and through the words of our ancestors, but we also have primary documentation to tell this story. And my coworker Nolan here is really fantastic at sharing that story through that primary documentation. And so I'd like to take that time and let him talk. Thank you, Sundaka.
Thank you, Bailey. I'm very blessed to have you all here today as our audience. You're such a fantastic and intellectual crowd, and I'm happy to share what I've come here to share here today. Bailey as well. This here is a photograph of one of our visits to Ennis Lake as a language and cultural preservation department. We put on cultural events all throughout our original territories, and Montana is just a piece of that vast expanse of homelands that we have. And this photo is significant because Tindoy, one of our Degwani, our leaders of the past, he was born nearby at a place called Jack's Creek. Our program, Original Territories and Historical Research, supports research projects concerning the homelands of the tribes, and we conduct research and coordinate informational educational efforts such as interpretive exhibits, curricula, and presentations for both tribal members and the public. And here we are back in 2021 when we took our youth and elders to the Museum of Idaho in Idaho Falls to check out the Way Out West exhibit, one that we co-curated with a number of our staff. And so there we have a chance to see our history. The Tribal Cultural Committee and our department combined together to host our cultural events. And just on Tuesday was the 156th anniversary of the Virginia City Treaty, which was signed, September 24th, 1868. So we commemorated that. We gathered, we feasted, we had discussion, we shared in the endeavors that our tribe is doing to have our lands recognized and restored to us. Would normally we host the event in Virginia City itself at Tyndall Park, a place where the city of Virginia City has designated a park for the use of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes. So future goals are to interpret that site. Our leaders left a path for us. Boy, they gave us a path, and we intend to follow in their footsteps in our homelands. So our program was actually established to research and help achieve the goals of the tribes to have our ancestral land claims recognized. And here, this map, it's an overlay of 3 different maps that I use to illustrate the work that we've been doing. This shows a map of lands judicially established by the Indian Claims Commission, a little snippet of southwest Montana, and you could see there's colored areas, and the white colored area had no land claims. Although, through the cession agreement following the Virginia City Treaty of 1868, we have laid out our Aboriginal territories according to the bands of Shoshones, Bannocks, and Sheep Eaters who lived there, represented by Tindoy and the other leaders. They illustrated a large area of southwest Montana, there outlined in red, that they would have ceded to the United States in exchange for a permanent homeland, which they never received. So continuing till today, we have been advocating for ourselves and working towards reaching the public, reaching the federal agencies, reaching the state agencies, and letting them know that our homelands are still ours. They're still unextinguished territory. Here in Southwest Montana, through meetings with the Forest Service and the BLM, they gave several proposals administratively for us to recover our lands. One of them you see here is an example of that. In southwestern Montana, there are what they're considered as disposal lands, lands that the BLM would like to get out of the business of managing because they're hard to manage. They're not contiguous. They might be 0.1 of an acre, all the way up to 160 acres areas that they said we can purchase at the market value. Now, that's just one solution that they offered. There are other things that we had discussed, and we're working at those still currently. We have our people who are called the Weehee from the knife side. It refers to the Shoshones and Bannocks living along the Continental Divide. And our Weehee Land Restoration Committee are working hard now, even with administrators and the Secretary of the Interior, to work out a relief for us. And besides that, our program is working in the fields of education. We're in the Language and Cultural Preservation Department, where we make that our priority as well. So when we visit our ancestral homes, we've taken on opportunities, grants, and other means so that we can educate our people using land pedagogy, place-based education, and reconnecting ourselves to our ancestral homelands and the beings there and the objects which still have our energy on them from ancient times. So Here's an example of that when we visited Yellowstone National Park at the Yellowstone Heritage Center. Bailey was able to pull out artifacts that had a lot of meaning and that we could have discussion on and teach the names of these items in our language to the youth and encourage them about different career fields that are related to the Park Service, from archaeology all the way down to the custodial jobs. Besides that, another aspect of our job is engaging in technical consultation with the federal government or state agencies, even nonprofits and educational institutions we have worked with. So the first example I had of that is here. When I started working in this program, we consulted with the City of Rocks National Reserve. It's a National Park Service unit in Idaho that's co-managed by Idaho State Parks and Recreation. There and all throughout our territories are examples of old ideologies, old history, and misinterpreted history about our people, or even erasure or non-mentioning of us. At City of Rocks, the theme, of course, you can imagine, is overland trails, the wagon roads. So there, rather than just present a story of, oh yes, there were wagon roads, oh yes, our people seen them or fought against them, or any other number of stories, we were able to present a story of political agency, of leadership, of sovereignty, that shared that our people actually negotiated agreements with the wagon road superintendent, Frederick Lander, who was also given money and the title as special Indian agent to treat with us the bands of Shoshones and Bannocks, whose homelands these Pacific wagon road routes, California Trail and others ran right through. So they made those agreements, and our leadership continued to lay the path for us. Other examples of technical consultation and poor representation of us are even in the heart of our territories, near Twin Falls, Shoshone Falls, where there were historically massive runs of anadromous fish, salmon, Pacific lamprey, and even sturgeon, a place where we had used for camps, for generations beyond count. That area sustained us. At this place, at the pinnacle of what's called the Snake River Overlook, the only mention of Native peoples was through this lens of manifest destiny. So the reversal of that is us telling, once again, time and time again, who we are. We're the people. We're Nuina. We've been here. We have such depth of time and depth of understanding of our homelands and landscapes, and the relation with them is so strong that we're making this effort all throughout our territories. So this is one example, and it shows not only at Hagerman Fossil Beds were modern day scientists interested in fossils, but that we were as well. And the illustration is done by my older brother, Derek No Son Brown. It's called Summer Stories, and it's to show the humanity and the curiosity of us also as peoples, and the stories that we might have shared concerning things that we have found also in the fossil beds. So there is an example. He's holding a Megantherian skull, which is one of the saber-toothed cats found in the Hagerman fossil beds. We even have oral history of the prehistoric horses that once roamed in the area. So now, rather than manifest destiny, we have a challenge to that. Even more so, each time we are successful at doing this in our homelands, we strengthen so many ties. And here we are, just on September 20th, last week, we dedicated the Craters of the Moon Devil's Orchard Trail. We had many folks come and join us and be in community with us. We had our elders offer prayers and blessings. We had our elders share stories and the language, and we're able to welcome people to our homelands rather than have someone speak for us. And we connected our deep history, our oral history of lava, times of flowing fire, and times of geological change that extend at least 2,000 years up to 14,000 years. So this oral history is millennia old. So strengthening those relationships is for our community, our elders. It's also for our youth. And we have a precaution of what does happen when this attempt is made, but not through our voice, where the use of our plants and our knowledge, our indigenous, our Shoshone-Bannock traditional knowledge can be misrepresented as creating magical potions. And then also, just doing events, one of them a year in itself is not enough to do the public outreach, community education that we need to establish our goals and to have everybody in line with us. So although there's plenty of representation and communication within our tribes, you know, we celebrate when we come home to our territories. We're still here. Sikh. Our children are still learning. We still visit the sites where our ancestors' feet once gathered. But there's so much more that we can do. And I'm here to share and go even a little bit deeper into what we would like to accomplish here in Montana, to set some goals up with you all today, because as I said, I believe all of you are fantastic intellectuals, and we will need to work together to accomplish these aims. And there's a moral dimension to it, there's a spiritual dimension, there's a political, organizational, so many different frames you can look at it. I want to pull on your heartstrings a little bit. I want to pull on a moral challenge. For the United States and the states, since the Continental Congress, there have been acts like the Northwest Ordinance, where they're supposed to deal with us in justice, with lawful interactions. And then also internationally, just the basic idea of basic human rights, indigenous rights. The United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Independence are one of them. Or excuse me, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. There's a word out there. It is a strong word to use, but genocide is one of which our cultures or our peoples are erased, either intentionally or not. But with intention and with a strong, united mind, I think that our tribe can move forward with educating you as a public and ourselves and each other's in ways to live together, because we have been in Montana for a long time, and we say we're central to the history today. When you look back at the history of the Montana Territory, even the Historical Society, they began in our territories. Bannock, of course, the capital of the territory, named after our peoples, right there in our backyard. And the city of Virginia City, we have a lot of history with, and even the Historical Society coming to existence in 1865 there. So we would like to have representation at the Montana Heritage Center that we understand is being constructed. And we feel that the heritage of Montana won't be completely represented without a little bit of knowledge shared from us, the content and context of our history that we find appropriate to share with you. We want to share, and we want the public to know about it so that we can maintain our connections to our homelands. Further, there's the Montana Indian Education for All, and we can get in line with the essential understandings. Everything that we want to present matches up with each of these points. But we need to start in the way that we're represented or not represented. And it would be best, rather than to be represented by an asterisk and a non-mention, to have clear outline of who we are and what we are about in the Montana Indian Education for All. So we have many Shoshonean treaties and agreements. You can see in this compilation from Vine Deloria Jr., all of the Shoshonean related treaties. Mapped out, we have 13 of them, and you can see the vast expanse of our people's homelands and where we traveled about. The Virginia City Treaty, September 24th, 1868, signed near Lawrence Ranch, beneath the Ruby Valley Mountains. That, in our minds, was a solid agreement that should have been upheld, but it was not. The treaty recognized use and occupancy. It was never authorized, and so therefore was never a cession of land. So our tribal lands have not been extinguished. To further back up those, there was a cession agreement that Chief Tindoy had signed at Content Corner. And those X marks and those intentions were considered the truth, as true as this gold foil and seal stamped there. So these are those territories. These are how they line up with the Indian Claims Commission. They're lacking because the claim wasn't presented. Exhibit A were treaties related to the 1863 Dottie treaties, and the 1868 treaty was left out of the Claims Commission litigation. But you can clearly see there is no common hunting ground. That is Shoshone and Bannock territories, homelands. And we never left. A lot of our people, my ancestors included here, Mary Use, she married Abraham Stearns Blake, and all of her family took up individual Indian allotments in Raleigh County. Our history, you can see in many of the pictures in your archives here in Montana of our people. From the early 1900s all the way to 1920, our presence has remained here in Montana. So once again, we're committed to both preservation and education of the history of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, and our mission is to strengthen our connection to our original territories among tribal citizens, all levels of government, and the public, while safeguarding the tribe's rights and interests. Here's our contact information. We work within the Language and Cultural Preservation Department of the tribes. And Usandaga, that is all, thank you.